called Bruno. We recall that he was not just a foot soldier of our movement, but an architect of the mind and a contributor to the politics of the ANC, as well as a transformation of the Gauteng provincial government. Bruno understood a fundamental truth, that a revolution is only as strong as the ideas that fuels it. He was a man who believed that the struggle for a better South Africa was a lifelong commitment, and his life was the ultimate testament of that belief. In talking about Comrade Bruno, we need to acknowledge our ancestry of struggle that is anchored on the youth of 1976, who were not only radical, but also committed to a more equal future and disciplined enough to do whatever was required to oppose the apartheid regime. This ancestry of struggle is what defined the activism of Comrade Brian Hlongwa and, of course, his peers. The formation of the United Democratic Front, UDF, under the leadership of the likes of Mama Sisulu, Reverend Frank Chikani, Amos Masondo, and many others, also served as an important anchor of Comrade Brian's activism, molding his activism from a very young age. Brian's journey was rooted in the very heart of resistance. I think this is testament to, when you read the obituary, you actually see that. It was clearly captured there. From his youth, he was a dedicated activist who rose through the ranks of the organizations that shaped our democracy. He served, as we all have heard, in the Congress of South African Students, COSAS, in the 1980s, the Soweto Youth Congress, SOICO, where we got to work together with Rapu and others when we formed the Alexander Youth Congress. He also joined the South African Youth Congress, SAICO, and its regional body known as the Southern Transvaal Youth Congress, STAICO. It is during this period that the ANC and other liberation movements in the country were banned. However, this created an opportunity for grassroots politics to become more robust, resulting in an active and conscious youth across our townships. The youth of Brian's generation was tasked with the responsibility of holding the fort at a time of great political uncertainty, as we know that during that time, organizations were banned. This, as such, talks much about the nature and character of Comrade Brian, that he was agile and understood what was required to sustain the revolution, even under challenging circumstances. During the apartheid period, as a youth, we were resolute in making the apartheid state unworkable. Now remember, I heard Veli saying that he couldn't remember who issued the directive to make South Africa ungovernable. It was President O.R. Tambo. The message came from O.R. himself. So it was during that time that the youth of the country responded to that challenge. And this required that as a youth at the time would be stoic and unrelenting about the need for change, and specifically the role that we had to play as activists at the time. That would mean that we should bring about change sooner. In our resolve to destabilize the regime and the status quo at the time, we were also able to model our activism through the United Democratic Front, COSAS, and PSYCHO, and all its structures, to ensure that we operated as laboratories of leadership that prepared young people who we were leading, particularly for the responsibility of power during the period of struggle and beyond. We did not just fight to tear down a system. We fought to learn how to build a new one. It is indeed this new system that the likes of Comrade Brian Hlongwa would shape and build in later years. As he rose through the ranks, Comrade Brian eventually became a cornerstone of the ANC Youth League and served in multiple structures at both the municipal and provincial levels. Also taking responsibility on government as a member of the Joburg City Council, as it was read in the obituary. And later, of course, he was then appointed MEC for Health in Gauteng under the leadership of Premier Mbazima Shilowa. That's an opportunity where I got to serve with him in the provincial government as I was MEC for Finance and Economic Development at the time. Comrades and friends, while many lead through titles, Comrade Brian Hlongwa led through enlightenment. At the O.R. Tambo School of Leadership, he didn't just manage programs, he cultivated the next generation of South African thinkers and shaped political discourse on social change amongst ANC activists and cadres. He was a seasoned political educator who was known for, amongst other things, the humility and selflessness in leadership. To Brian, political education was never about dogma. It was about empowering every cadre to think critically, lead ethically, and selflessly. Of course, many would probably be surprised when I say he led with humility, because Comrade Brian was rough at times. And those who were saying he would never stop when he believes in an idea. He would never lose an argument. And I'm sure many of the young lions here of this generation would know that. And I would recall very much, I would spend some time with him, with friends and partners during my birthday. So we'd go to a game reserve, spend 3 days there. And Brian would sit around the fire with some of the friends, and they would argue until early hours of the morning. And during breakfast, I'll ask Jolene, "Where is Brian?" He says, "Brian is still sleeping. He only came to the room at 4 a.m. Because he would argue and argue and argue. And those comrades who would argue with him knew that you'll never win against Comrade Brian when he believes in an idea. He held deep convictions that the liberation of the mind was the ultimate and necessary step in the liberation of the people. even during holidays, when we spend time together, he will continue arguing his ideas. But this is a character also that I recognize in him when we were in prison. As Comrade Maile said earlier, we were all detained under the state of emergency, and we spent some years in prison without trial. I think I spent about 4 years there. So Comrade Brian was there, and we would sit and engage in political debate throughout. I used to chair a structure where I served with Comrade Ambi, Amos Masondo, we call him Bra Ambi. I was the chairman of the forum, and Bra Ambi was serving there with me. And would make sure that all political prisoners who get detained go through lectures. What the regime was doing at the time, they'll arrest people for throwing stones and whatever, and bundle them in prison, and some of them did not really understand the struggle. So we had to take them through a lot of political courses so that we developed them. And we used to plan those programs through the forum. And Comrade Brian at the time was staying with me in one cell called Utopia. I can't remember why we called it Utopia, but our cell was called Utopia. And another one next door of the rowdy people was called Bangladesh. And then there was another one, not so rowdy, was called Nicaragua. So the cells had names, and one upstairs was Angola. I think we're remembering Amajoinum Condolences. So that one was Angola. So we would sit and debate political literature. I was tasked with narrating the history of resistance. So I would do a lot of that, and also to explain the Freedom Charter and also the National Democratic Revolution. But the advanced teams of Brian Hlongwa and others in their own time will then focus on Marxism, materialism, and the dialectical methods. So they will be dealing with those things. And Brian you'll find him leading in most of those discussions. But there's another important period I want to mention, that in 2008, I led a team to China when I was a leader in Gauteng. And in that team, there was Comrade Makura, David Makura, known to many of you. I don't know if he's here today. Comrade Makura later became the Premier of Gauteng. So I was with Comrade Makura, Comrade Ntombi, Comrade Brian, and we learned so much in China that since that trip, I think for me, Comrade Brian became a true commissar. We came back, and one of the immediate ideas we implemented was a party school, the one that is mentioned. Joburg started a party school, Gauteng, which later became a Walter Sisulu School of Leadership. And when Brian left the legislature, I was the Treasurer General of the ANC, and I noticed that Comrade Brian has now left the legislature. So knowing that he's a commissar, I then appointed him at the National Party School that is currently now chaired by Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe. So that's where he was for many of the years after he left the legislature. So we will always remember Comrade Brian, not as somebody who's very argumentative, but someone who always chant new ideas, always reading, thinking ahead, and making sure that we come with new ideas to execute the struggle for change. The life of Comrade Brian Hlongwa teaches us an important lesson about the totality of struggle, particularly that in the same way that the liberation movement and the 1976 youth fought apartheid in its totality, so should the current generation fight poverty, inequality, administrative failure with the same bravery and zeal. This, of course, requires further commitments towards the renewal of the African National Congress. Renewal should be a duty and not merely a slogan. It must be anchored on the hard work of political education and cadre development. As per the resolution of the NEC of the ANC, all leaders have gone through this political education, from national to provinces, even to regions and branches at the moment. We want to ensure that there must be nobody within our ranks who does not have at least a basic education of what the struggle is all about. And that's why we're implementing this program. And it's currently, the school currently is led by Comrade David Makura. Comrades, as I conclude, because I don't want to be like Rapu, I told Rapu that he must email his speech to me. Because Rapu, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the comrades in Gauteng to invite me to come and give a lecture on the lives and times of Brian Hlongwa. So if you email me your speech, I may include those ideas in the lecture. I know that funerals are always short, so it's not easy to talk about the lives of an activist like Brian Hlongwa in 20 minutes. And that's why I think a lecture will be a good idea. The leadership is listening here. A lecture will be a good idea. I will come to give the lecture. Give me at least, for that day, give me at least 3 hours. 3 hours. As I conclude, comrades, allow me to draw from Amilcar Cabral's 1965 Party Directive for Revolutionary Practice to assist us to contextualize where we are and what needs to be done. I've already said the youth must rise to deal with poverty, all the challenges we are facing today, inequality, etc. But the big question is, where are we today as a movement? Are we still the ANC of the people? So when we talk about renewal, we need to ensure that indeed we don't lose that touch. And in dealing what needs to be done at the moment, I want to quote from what Amilcar Cabral said so that we can learn from that. And this is what he said. He says that revolutionaries must always bear in mind that the people are not fighting for ideas or for the things in anyone's head. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. So we should recognize as a matter of conscience that there have been many faults and errors as he goes forward in our action, whether political or military. And he says an important number of things we should have done, we have not done at the right times or not done at all. That's what Amilcar Cabral says, and we need to take that into account. He further says, and he concludes by saying, revolutionaries must practice revolutionary democracy in every aspect of party life. Every responsible member must have the courage of his responsibilities, exacting from others a proper respect for his work, and properly respecting the work of others. Hide nothing from the masses of our people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties or mistakes or failures, and claim no easy victories. Close quote. So this, comrades, is what I think is one of the lessons that we can take forward from the life of Comrade Brian Hlongwa, that indeed to the Congress and to the people we should remain true. As we prepare to go to the January 8th celebration for its 114th anniversary, our political posture should not shift. We must ignite the slogan that says, Amandla asemasebe, matla abatu, revolution ke batho. We must ensure that real power always lies with the people. To the Hlongwa family, Jolene and the children, we recognize that whilst the nation has lost a leader, you have lost a pillar of your family. We thank you for having shared him with the ANC and South Africa for all these years. May the stories of his bravery in the struggle against apartheid and in the building of our democracy bring you a sense of pride and peace during this time of grief. May we find comfort in the memories of his service, and may we honor him by continuing the work of liberating the mind in everything we do. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Hamba kahle, Comrade Brian Hlongwa. Hamba kahle, Bruno Kawe Lamakawe. Thank you.
Thank you, DP. Thank you, Deputy President. Now we're going to allow the Reverend, because he will be leading